Let me ask you something honest. When you try to speak English, what happens inside your head first? For most people, there is a process. You think of what you want to say, you think it in your native language, then you try to translate it into English, then you speak, and by the time all of that is finished, the moment has passed. The conversation has moved on, and you are left standing there, a little embarrassed, a little frustrated, knowing exactly what you wanted to say, but unable to say it fast enough. This is not a language problem, this is a process problem, and in this course, we are going to fix the process. Here is the truth that almost no language course will tell you. Fluency is not about how many words you know. It is not about how many grammar rules you have studied. It is not about how many hours you have spent reading English textbooks. Fluency is about how quickly your brain and your mouth connect without anything getting in the way. Right now, something is getting in the way. That something is your native language. Every time you want to speak, your brain runs the information through your first language first. It is like trying to drive a car by giving directions to someone else who then tells the car where to go. The extra step slows everything down. And the slowness is what makes you feel like you cannot speak English well. But here is what you need to understand. This extra step is not permanent. It is not a limitation you were born with. It is a habit. A very old, very comfortable habit, but still just a habit. And habits can be replaced. In this course, we are going to build a new habit. We are going to train your brain to think in English directly. We are going to train your mouth to produce English naturally without waiting for translation. We are going to rebuild the way your mind connects to language, step by step, lesson by lesson. Some of what you learn here will feel strange at first. Some exercises will feel like they are too simple. Some will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. That discomfort is the sound of an old habit being replaced by a new one. By the time you finish this course, you will not be a different person. You will be the same person, but with a mind that has learned to live inside English, not just visit it. Let us begin. 1, why your brain translates and how to stop it. Before we can fix the translation habit, we need to understand where it comes from. We need to understand why your brain does it in the first place, because once you understand the reason, the solution becomes obvious. When you were a child learning your native language, you did not translate. You could not translate. There was no other language to translate from. You simply heard sounds. You connected those sounds to feelings, to objects, to situations. When your mother said a certain word and pointed at something warm and bright, that word meant warm and bright to you, not because someone explained it, because you experienced it. That is how first language learning works. It is direct, it goes straight from word to meaning. No middleman, no translation, just experience. Now think about how you learned English. Most people learn it in a classroom. And in a classroom, what happens? The teacher holds up an apple and says the English word, then they say the word in your native language, or they write both words on the board. Or you open a dictionary and you see your native language on one side and English on the other. You were taught that English words are replacements for your native language words, and so your brain stored them that way. English word equals native language word. And when you want to use the English word, your brain has to go find the native language word first, and then find the English replacement. This is the system that was built for you, and it has been running in your brain for years. Every time you studied vocabulary with translation lists, you reinforced it. Every time you read a bilingual dictionary, you reinforced it. Every time someone asked you what an English word means and you answered in your native language, you reinforced it. You did not choose this system, it was given to you, but now we are going to replace it. The new system works like this. English words connect directly to meaning, to image, to feeling, to experience. When you hear the word rain, you do not think of the word for rain in your native language. You see rain, you feel rain, you hear rain. The word rain and the experience of rain are connected without any step in between. This sounds simple, and in many ways it is, but simple is not the same as easy. Building this new system takes practice and patience. It takes the willingness to feel uncertain while the new pathways are being created. So here is your first exercise. Starting today, when you encounter a new English word, do not look it up in a bilingual dictionary. Instead, find an image, find a situation, find a feeling, connect the word to something real, something that exists in the world, not to another word in another language. If you hear the word enormous, do not look for the translation. Instead, picture the biggest thing you have ever seen, a mountain, an ocean, a sky full of clouds. Let the word enormous live inside that image. Every time you see that image in your mind, the word enormous is there with it. When you hear the word exhausted, do not translate it. Instead, remember the last time you were so tired that your legs felt like concrete and your eyes refused to stay open. Let that memory hold the word exhausted. Now when you need that word, your brain does not go hunting through another language. It goes straight to that feeling. This is called deep vocabulary acquisition, and it is one of the most powerful tools in language learning. Every word you learn this way becomes a real English word, not a borrowed word wearing an English costume. Practice this today. Take 5 words you have been trying to learn. For each word, forget the translation, find the real thing behind the word, an image, a memory, a physical sensation. Let the word attach itself to that real thing. Do this every day. After a few weeks, you will notice something. When you think of certain things, the English word comes first, not the translation, not the native language word, the English word. And that moment, that small, quiet moment, is the beginning of thinking in English. Let us go a little deeper into this process because it is so central to everything that follows. The reason translation slows you down is not just about the time it takes, it is about the nature of what translation does to meaning. When you translate, meaning becomes something abstract. It becomes a word about a word instead of a word about a thing. Think about the word grief. If your brain stores grief as the English word that equals the grief word in your native language, then grief is abstract. It is a label. But if your brain stores grief as the weight in your chest when you lost someone you loved, the silence in a room that used to be full of noise, the smell of something that belongs to someone who is no longer there, then grief is real. It is physical. It is immediate. And when you need that word, it comes from a real place inside you, not from a dictionary comparison. This depth of connection is why some language learners who have relatively small vocabularies can speak more fluently than others with enormous vocabularies. The small vocabulary learner has deep connections to the words they know. The large vocabulary learner has shallow connections to many words. Deep beats shallow every time in real conversation because real conversation does not wait for you to run vocabulary comparisons in your head. So as you work through this course, keep returning to this principle. Every word you encounter, make it real. Give it a life inside your experience. Store it in your body as much as in your brain and watch the translation habit slowly, inevitably dissolve. 2, the inner voice and how to make it English. There is a voice inside your head that never stops talking. It is with you from the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep. Some people call it the inner monologue, some people call it self-talk. Whatever you call it, it is constant and it is almost certainly happening in your native language right now. That voice is the key to speaking English naturally, because the language of your inner voice is the language your mouth will reach for first when you try to speak out loud. If your inner voice is always speaking in your native language, your mouth has to make a long journey to reach English. But if your inner voice is speaking in English, your mouth can take a shortcut directly from thought to speech. Changing your inner voice is not complicated, but it requires you to be deliberate. It requires you to catch yourself, to notice when the voice is speaking in your native language, and to redirect it. Let us start small. Right now, you are listening to this lesson. The voice in your head is processing what you hear. It may be translating, commenting, agreeing, or disagreeing, all in your native language. From this moment, try to have that inner voice respond in English. When you hear something interesting, your inner voice might want to say something. Let it say it in English. Even if the English is broken, even if it cannot find the right words, even if it has to pause, let it try. This is not about being perfect. This is about practice. The inner voice does not need to be grammatically correct right now. It just needs to be English. Here is a practical way to start. Pick one part of your day and commit to thinking in English during that time only. Not all day, just one part. Maybe it is your morning routine. You wake up, and as you brush your teeth, you narrate what you are doing in English inside your head. Nobody can hear it. There is no pressure. You think, I am brushing my teeth. The water is cold. I am tired. I need coffee. I should leave in 30 minutes. Simple. ordinary, but every one of those thoughts is English, not a translation of English. And every one of those thoughts is training your brain to produce English automatically. As the days go by, expand that window. Add your commute, add your lunch break, add the time when you are waiting for something. Slowly, gradually, the English inner voice will take up more and more space. There will be moments when you get stuck. When you want to think something in English, but you do not know the words, that is fine. In those moments, you have two choices. The first choice is to simplify. Instead of thinking the complicated thing you wanted to think a simpler version of it. If you cannot think, I am absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of work I need to finish today, then think I have a lot of work. I am tired. It is difficult. Simplified, but still English. The second choice is to learn the word you were missing and use it the next time. When you discover a gap in your vocabulary through your inner voice, that gap matters to you. You needed that word. That makes it much more likely you will remember it when you learn it. Both choices build your English inner voice. Both move you forward. Now let us talk about something that stops many learners in this process, and that is the feeling that you are not being yourself when you think in English. Many people feel like their personality disappears when they switch languages. They feel less funny, less expressive, less intelligent. They feel like a different and somehow smaller version of themselves. This feeling is real and it is temporary. When you are new to a language, you do not yet have the tools to express everything you are. You cannot make the same jokes. You cannot explain your thoughts with the same depth. You cannot be sarcastic or poetic or philosophical the way you can in your native language. And this feels like a loss, but it is not a loss. It is an early stage. Children who are learning to speak cannot yet tell stories. They can only name things. They say cup and dog and more, but nobody looks at a child saying cup and thinks this child has no personality. They are just at the beginning. You are also at a beginning, a different beginning, because you are an adult with a rich inner life, but still a beginning. The full richness of who you are will eventually be expressible in English. But only if you keep building, only if you keep the English inner voice active. So accept the simplicity of this stage, embrace it, think small English thoughts and be proud of them, because every small English thought is a brick in the house you are building. And one day, that house will be the place where your full personality lives. There is one more thing worth saying about the English inner voice. It is not just a learning tool, it is a relationship. As you spend more time thinking in English, you begin to develop a relationship with the language that is different from any relationship you can build through study alone. You begin to notice things about English, the way certain words carry specific emotional weights, the way some phrases feel sharp and others feel warm, the way rhythm and stress can completely change the meaning of a sentence. These observations only come through intimacy with the language, and intimacy only comes through living inside it. The inner voice is how you begin to live inside English, even when you are in your own home, even when you are surrounded by your native language, even when no English speaker is anywhere near you. Make the inner voice your companion. Let it grow, let it become more comfortable with English over time, and listen to what it tells you, because as it becomes more fluent, it will also become wiser about what you still need to learn. There will be days when the inner voice is strong and days when it goes quiet. On the quiet days, do not force it. Simply notice the absence and then invite it back gently. Think one English thought, just one, and let that be enough to restart the practice. Consistency over intensity. A little every day is far more powerful than a lot occasionally. 3, mouth memory, training your mouth, not just your mind. Most people think language learning is a mental activity. You study with your brain, you memorize with your brain, you understand with your brain. This is true, but it is only half of the story. Speaking is also a physical activity. Speaking requires your mouth, your tongue, your lips, your throat to move in very specific patterns. And those patterns need to become automatic. They need to become muscle memory. Because when you are in the middle of a real conversation, you do not have time to consciously direct every movement of your mouth. It has to happen on its own. This is something athletes understand very well. A tennis player who has to think about how to hold the racket during every shot will lose. The grip has to be automatic, the swing has to be automatic. So they practice the same movements thousands and thousands of times until the body knows what to do without the mind having to give instructions. You need to do the same thing with English sounds and phrases. Think about a phrase like, "How are you doing?" You have probably heard this phrase hundreds of times, but can you say it without thinking? Can you say it at the speed of a native speaker, with the same rhythm, the same natural reduction, without pausing to construct it? For many learners, the answer is no, and that is because they have understood the phrase, but they have not drilled it into muscle memory. Mouth memory is built through repetition, specific, conscious, deliberate repetition. Not reading, not listening, saying out loud, over and over, until your mouth can produce the phrase without any mental effort at all. Here's how to build it. Take a short phrase or sentence, something common, something you need to say regularly in English. Now say it 10 times, not quickly, carefully at first, getting the sounds exactly right, then gradually faster, then at natural speed, then faster than natural speed, then back to natural speed. By the end of that repetition, your mouth knows this phrase. It does not need your brain to construct it anymore. When the situation arises in conversation, your mouth can pull that phrase out automatically. Your brain is free to think about what you actually want to say. This is important. When your mouth handles common phrases automatically, your brain does not have to manage the mechanical work of speaking. It can focus entirely on the content, and this is what allows you to sound fluent, because your brain is spending its energy on meaning, not mechanics. Let us talk about specific types of phrases that are worth drilling into muscle memory. First, filler phrases. These are the phrases that give you time to think without creating an awkward silence. Phrases like, "That is a good question. Let me think about that for a moment." What I mean to say is, "So here is the thing. Well, actually, you know what I think?" These phrases do not carry heavy meaning, but they are essential for natural conversation. They give you a second or two to organize your thoughts without the silence that makes people assume you do not understand. Second, transition phrases. These are phrases that connect your ideas as you speak. Things like, "And the reason for that is." What this means is, so to put it another way, and the interesting thing is building on that. Now here is where it gets complicated. These phrases make your speech flow. They show the listener that more is coming. They hold the conversation together. Third, correction phrases. These are phrases you use when you make a mistake or want to rephrase. What I meant to say was, actually, let me correct that. Or rather, to be more precise, I should say, these are gold, because making mistakes in conversation is inevitable. What separates fluent speakers from struggling speakers is not that fluent speakers never make mistakes. It is that they know how to recover from them quickly and naturally. Fourth, agreement and response phrases. Absolutely, that makes sense, right? Exactly. I see what you mean. That is a fair point. Good point. Oh, interesting. Really? Go on. These phrases keep the conversation alive. They show the other person you are engaged. And they give you micro moments to process what is being said while still sounding active and present. Drill all of these into your mouth memory. Take them one by one. Practice them until they come out without any thinking at all, until they feel as natural in your mouth as the words in your native language. One more thing about mouth memory. Pay attention to rhythm and stress. English has a very specific music. Certain syllables are stressed. Certain words carry weight while others are reduced and almost swallowed. This rhythm is part of what makes English sound like English. If you say every word with equal stress, equal length, equal volume, you will be understood, but you will not sound fluent. The music will be wrong. Listen to native speakers carefully. Notice which syllables are emphasized. Notice the way words blend together. Notice how that sounds almost like a different language from the careful, word-by-word English you learned in school. Then imitate that music, not just the words, the rhythm, the stress, the speed, the rise and fall of the sentences. Let your mouth learn the music of English, because fluency is not just about words, it is about the music between them. Here is something important that many learners overlook when building mouth memory: recording yourself. Most people avoid this because hearing their own voice in English is uncomfortable. It sounds different from how it sounds inside their head. The accent is more obvious. The mistakes are more audible. But this discomfort is immensely productive. When you record yourself saying a phrase and then listen back, you hear the gap between what you intended and what you produced. You hear the syllable you swallowed. You hear the stress that landed in the wrong place. You hear the vowel that drifted away from its target. Once you hear the gap, you can close it. And closing that gap one phrase at a time, one sound at a time, is how your mouth memory becomes accurate rather than just automatic. Automatic but accurate is the goal, because accuracy without automaticity gives you careful, slow speech. And automaticity without accuracy gives you confident but unclear speech. The combination automatic and accurate gives you fluency. Record yourself daily, even 1 minute, even one paragraph. Listen back, identify one thing to improve, practice that one thing 10 times, record again. You will surprise yourself with how quickly things change. 4. The shadow technique, copying your way to fluency. There is a technique used by professional interpreters, people who translate speech in real time for world leaders, diplomats, and heads of state. These are among the most skilled language users in the world. And they use a technique called shadowing to build their ability to process and produce language at high speed. Shadowing means listening to someone speaking and repeating what they say at the same time, not after, not before, at the same time. You are essentially chasing the speaker's voice like a shadow, always just a fraction of a second behind. This technique is extraordinarily powerful for English learners, and you do not need to be training to be an interpreter to benefit from it. You just need audio, English speech, and your mouth. Here is why shadowing works. When you shadow, your brain is doing several things at once. It is processing the sounds it hears, it is understanding the meaning of the words, it is predicting what comes next, and it is producing the same sounds with your own voice, all simultaneously. This forces your brain to work at the speed of real spoken English. It cannot pause and translate. It has to keep up, and over time, it learns to keep up naturally. Let us talk about how to do it properly. Because shadowing done wrong will not give you the same results. First, choose your audio carefully. For shadowing, you want natural speech, not slow, overpronounced classroom English, but real spoken English at real speed. Podcasts work well, short talks and speeches work well. Film dialogue works well, though it can sometimes be stylized. News broadcasts are good for formal speech. Choose something that is slightly challenging but not completely incomprehensible. If you understand less than 60% of what you hear, it is too difficult to shadow effectively. Second, listen once before you shadow. Just listen. Get a feel for the rhythm, the vocabulary, the topic. This prepares your brain for what is coming. Third, shadow out loud, not in your head. Out loud. Your mouth needs to be moving. The physical act of production is the point. You should be making sounds that are almost identical to what you are hearing, just a half second behind. Fourth, do not worry about understanding every single word. When you first shadow, you will miss things. That is fine. Keep going. Do not stop to think. Keep your mouth moving. Fluency is about not stopping. You can review and study the parts you missed after the session is over. Fifth, exaggerate the sounds. When you hear a particular vowel sound or a particular stress pattern, exaggerate it slightly as you shadow. Make it bigger than it needs to be. This helps your mouth learn the muscle movements required and makes those movements easier and more natural over time. Sixth, shadow for short sessions many times rather than long sessions few times. 10 minutes of shadowing every day will help you more than 90 minutes once a week. Consistency is everything with this technique. Your brain and mouth need regular practice, not occasional marathons. Now let me tell you what to pay attention to while you shadow. Beyond just repeating the words, notice the music. Notice where the speaker's voice rises and where it falls. Notice which words they emphasize and which ones they almost swallow. Notice how they breathe, where they pause, how they connect words together. In English, a phenomenon called linking is very common. Words at the end of one syllable connect smoothly to the beginning of the next word. I am becomes I'm. Want to becomes wanna. Going to becomes gonna. Did you becomes didya. These links are not lazy or incorrect. They are the natural sound of fluent English speech, and shadowing is the fastest way to learn how they work, not by studying rules, but by experiencing them with your ears and mouth together. After shadowing the same passage a few times, try to produce it from memory without the audio. You will find that certain phrases have stuck in your mouth. They come out naturally with the right rhythm, the right stress, the right sound. That is mouth memory being built in real time. Over weeks and months of shadowing, something remarkable happens. The way you process English changes. You begin to predict what words come next in a sentence before you have heard them. You begin to feel the grammar without thinking about rules. You begin to hear the difference between natural and unnatural English, the way a musician hears the difference between in tune and out of tune. And most importantly, you begin to produce English at speed without translating. Because the shadowing practice has trained your brain to connect sound to sound, mouth to meaning, without any stops in between. This is one of the most valuable techniques in this entire course. Use it, do it every single day, even 10 minutes, even 5. Let your mouth chase English voices until your own voice becomes one of them. Let me share a few more thoughts on how to make shadowing even more effective over time. As you progress, vary the material you shadow. Do not shadow only one accent or one speaking style. Shadow podcasters, shadow news anchors, shadow comedians doing interviews, shadow documentary narrators, shadow characters in well-written films. Each voice teaches your ear and your mouth something slightly different. Pay particular attention to how different speakers handle the same challenge, what to do with silence. Some speakers pause confidently, some fill pauses with words, some use breath patterns that signal they are thinking. These micro behaviors are part of the fabric of natural speech. When you shadow them, you absorb them, and when you speak, you have a wider range of natural-sounding behavior to draw from. Also pay attention to how speakers handle emotion in their speech. When a speaker is excited, what happens to their pitch? When they are serious, how does their pace change? When they are surprised, what does that sound like? English is an expressive language, and the expression lives in the voice as much as the words. Shadowing teaches you not just what to say, but how to sound when you say it. And that how is often the difference between sounding functional and sounding genuinely fluent. 5. Thinking in scenes, not sentences. One of the biggest differences between fluent speakers and struggling speakers is not vocabulary size. It is not grammar knowledge. It is this. Fluent speakers think in scenes. Struggling speakers think in sentences. What does that mean? Let me explain. When you try to speak English by constructing sentences in your head, here is what happens. You think of a noun, you try to remember the verb that goes with it, you remember a grammar rule, you try to apply the rule to the verb, you check whether the tense is correct, you search for the right preposition. And by the time all of this is done, the sentence you wanted to say was needed 3 seconds ago. This is what sentence thinking feels like. It is slow, it is mechanical, it is exhausting, and it produces speech that sounds careful but lifeless because it is being assembled piece by piece instead of flowing naturally. Scene thinking is different. A fluent speaker does not think about individual sentences. They think about a situation, a moment, an image, and the language comes out of the scene automatically, like light comes out of a lamp when you switch it on. Think about how you describe things in your native language. You do not plan each sentence. You see the scene in your mind, what happened, what it looked like, what it felt like, and the words come out to describe what you see. The language and the scene are connected directly. You need to build that same connection in English, and it starts with a shift in how you think about language learning. Instead of learning English words and sentences as abstract items, you learn them as attached to situations. Instead of learning, he ran, you see the image of a man sprinting, breathing hard, arms pumping. Instead of learning, the meeting was canceled. You see the room, the chairs, the absence of people, the notification on someone's phone. You connect the language to a vivid, specific reality. This is how actors learn their lines. The best actors do not memorize words. They live in scenes. They understand what their character is experiencing at every moment, and the words come from the experience. If you have seen a great actor, you know that their words feel inevitable. They could not say anything else because the scene dictates exactly what needs to be said. You can use the same approach when you practice English. Instead of drilling sentences in isolation, put them in scenes. Here is a practical exercise. Think of a simple situation from your daily life. You're ordering coffee. You're asking for directions. You're calling to cancel an appointment. Now play the scene in your mind. See it, feel it. Where are you? Who is there? What do you need? What does the other person say? Now speak the English inside that scene. Do not worry about grammar. Do not plan the words. Just speak what the scene needs. If you get stuck, simplify the scene. If you cannot say what you want, say something smaller, but stay inside the scene. Do not step outside it to think about grammar rules. Stay present in the moment of the scene. Do this with many different scenes. Build a library of scenes in your mind, each one populated with English. When you need to speak in a real situation, your brain will recognize the scene it is in, find the matching scenes from your practice, and pull out language automatically. There is a concept in linguistics called chunking. This means that fluent speakers do not process language one word at a time. They process it in chunks, groups of words that belong together, that function as a unit of meaning. Phrases like, I was wondering if you could you do me a favor? As far as I know, it turns out that there is no way, at the end of the day. These chunks are stored and retrieved as single units, not assembled word by word. When you think in scenes, you naturally activate the chunks that belong to that scene, because those chunks are not just stored as language, they are stored as part of the experience. The coffee shop scene comes with its own vocabulary, its own phrases, its own rhythm of exchange. The phone call scene has a different set of chunks. The work meeting has another set. The more scenes you build in English, and the more you populate those scenes with English language experience, the richer your fluency becomes. So stop thinking of English as a set of sentences to memorize. Start thinking of it as a world to inhabit. Every scene you practice is a room in that world. And the more rooms you build, the more comfortably you can live in the English language. Now let us talk about how to build your library of scenes practically. You do not need special equipment or a classroom. You need your imagination and a willingness to rehearse. Take a situation you encounter regularly in your life, a conversation with a shopkeeper, a meeting at work, a phone call to make an appointment, a discussion with a friend about plans for the weekend, a disagreement that needs to be handled calmly. Pick one, sit quietly, close your eyes if it helps. Place yourself inside the scene completely. Where are you standing? What does the room look like? What time of day is it? Who else is there? What are you trying to accomplish? What does the other person want? Now begin to speak the English inside that scene. Not a rehearsed speech, a living conversation. Improvise, let the scene unfold. If you get stuck, simplify. Change the scene slightly to make it more manageable, but keep the English coming. Then do the same scene again the next day and the day after. Each time it becomes smoother. Each time the language comes faster because you have been there before. The scene is familiar, and in familiar scenes, language flows. After a week of this, add a new scene, build your library. Eventually, when you encounter real situations in English, your brain will search its library and find something close enough to draw from, and the language will come from memory and instinct instead of construction and translation. This is the real secret behind what native speakers do so effortlessly. They have lived thousands of scenes in their language. Their library is enormous. When they walk into a new situation, they already have reference points. They have been somewhere similar in their minds. And the language comes from those reference points, not from grammar books. You can build the same library. It takes time and intentional practice, but every scene you rehearse is an investment that pays dividends in every future real conversation. 6, the art of speaking slowly to speak faster. Here is something that seems to make no sense. One of the best ways to become a faster, more fluent English speaker is to practice speaking more slowly. I know, that sounds backwards. But stay with me because the logic is solid and the results are real. When most language learners try to speak English quickly, what actually happens is this: they rush because they are afraid. They are afraid of pauses. They are afraid that if there is a moment of silence, the other person will think they do not understand English. So they fill every space with sound, even if that sound is broken, confused, or wrong. The result is speech that is actually harder to understand than slow speech, because the words are unclear, the pronunciation is smudged, the grammar collapses under the pressure, and the speaker is running ahead of their own thinking, producing words without knowing where the sentence is going. This is what anxiety-driven speech sounds like, and almost every learner has done it at some point. Speaking slowly is not speaking badly. Speaking slowly is speaking with control, and control is what leads to clarity, and clarity over time leads to speed. Here is the truth about native speakers. They do not always speak quickly. Confident, articulate native speakers speak at a measured pace. They are not rushing. They know what they want to say, and they take the time to say it properly. They pause between ideas. They let their words land before moving to the next thought. It is actually the nervous, unsure speakers who rush. The same thing happens in your native language. When you are flustered or uncertain, you speak faster. When you are calm and confident, you speak at a steady, clear pace. So what we are training here is not speed, we are training clarity. We are training confidence. We are training the ability to speak at a pace that gives your brain time to work. When you speak slowly and deliberately, something happens in your processing. You give yourself the time to find the right word instead of grabbing the wrong one in a panic. You give yourself the time to feel the grammar, to notice when a sentence is going off track and redirect it. You give yourself the time to listen to your own speech and adjust. This adjustment, listening to yourself as you speak and making real-time corrections, is a hallmark of fluent speakers. They are not just producing words, they are monitoring the output. They are aware of what they said and whether it was right, and they catch errors before the sentence is finished. Slow, deliberate practice builds this skill. When you practice at a pace that is comfortable for your current level, your brain has the processing capacity to monitor, adjust, and improve. When you rush, all of that capacity is swallowed by the effort of just keeping up. Here is an exercise for slow, deliberate speaking. Pick a topic, any topic, something you care about. Now describe your opinion on that topic in English. But every time you want to say a word and you are not sure it is the right word, pause. Take a breath, find the right word. Then say it. Do not fill the pause with or ah. Just be silent for a moment. The silence is okay. In real conversations, people do not actually mind a small pause before you speak. What they mind is confusion. What they mind is not understanding you. Silence is not confusion. Practice this every day. A minute or two of deliberate, careful speaking. Each session, you will find that the pauses get shorter. Not because you are rushing, but because the words come faster, because the retrieval is getting easier, because the connections are getting stronger. Eventually, your natural speaking speed will increase, not because you pushed it, but because your processing became more efficient. You will speak at the speed of your understanding, not the speed of your anxiety. And the difference between those two speeds is enormous. Let me give you one more layer to this lesson, because it connects to something you will experience often: the judgment of others. Many learners are afraid to speak slowly because they worry about what it looks like. They think, if I speak slowly, people will think I do not know English well. But this is almost always the opposite of reality. People who speak slowly and clearly are perceived as thoughtful and intelligent. People who speak quickly and unclearly are perceived as nervous and difficult to follow. Think of a speaker you admire in any language, a teacher who captivated you, a leader who commanded a room, a storyteller who held everyone's attention. Almost without exception, these people speak at a measured, deliberate pace. They are not rushing. They understand that the listener needs time to receive what they are saying, and they give that time generously. You can carry that same presence into your English speaking, not the rushed, anxious pace of someone trying to prove they know the language, the measured, grounded pace of someone who is comfortable inside it. Slow speech is powerful speech, and powerful speech practiced daily becomes fast, because what began as slowness was never really about speed, it was about control. And control, once achieved, is capable of any speed. 7, breaking the grammar paralysis. Let us talk about something that silences more English speakers than almost anything else: grammar paralysis. Grammar paralysis is what happens when you know you want to say something, but before you say it, a part of your brain starts checking. Is this the right tense? Is this the right preposition? Should this be plural? Is this the right article? A or the? Do I use who or whom? And in the time it takes to run all of those checks, the moment for speaking has passed. Grammar paralysis is the enemy of fluency, and it is ironically most common in people who have studied English the most. The more grammar rules you have learned, the more rules you feel obligated to apply consciously before you speak. And the more rules you apply consciously, the slower you become. Here is the important thing to understand. Native speakers do not think about grammar rules when they speak. They have internalized the patterns. The grammar runs in the background, automatically, below the level of conscious thought. They do not decide to use the past perfect tense. They just feel that a certain way of saying something sounds right and another way sounds wrong. That sense of what sounds right, that is internalized grammar. And that is what you are trying to develop. Let me be very clear about something. This does not mean grammar rules are useless. Grammar study has value. Understanding how the language is structured helps you recognize patterns. It helps you understand why something sounds wrong when it does. It gives you a framework for analyzing input. But grammar rules are for study time. They are not for speaking time. When you are in the middle of a conversation, the grammar rules need to be asleep. Your mouth needs to be working on instinct, on feel, on the patterns you have absorbed through listening and reading and shadowing. So how do you move grammar from your conscious mind into your unconscious instinct? The answer is input. Massive, repeated, comprehensible input in English. Every time you listen to natural English speech, every time you read natural English text, every time you shadow a native speaker, you are feeding your brain patterns. Over time, those patterns accumulate. They stack on top of each other. They begin to feel familiar, and eventually they begin to feel right, and wrong things begin to feel wrong. This is how children learn grammar. Nobody tells a child the rules. The child simply hears the language thousands of times. Billions of individual data points enter the brain, and the brain, which is a pattern-recognizing machine, extracts the grammar from the input automatically. You can do the same thing as an adult. It takes longer because you are also juggling a first language and conscious logical thinking, but it works, and it is the only approach that produces truly fluent speech. So here is your assignment regarding grammar. Study grammar rules in dedicated study sessions. Understand them. Use them to analyze and understand difficult text. But when you speak, suspend all grammar checking. Speak from feel. Make mistakes. Allow the imperfection. Keep going. When you make a mistake, note it mentally or write it down after the conversation. But do not stop mid-sentence to correct yourself if you can help it. The cost of stopping in terms of fluency, rhythm, and confidence is almost always higher than the cost of the mistake. After the speaking moment has passed, review. Ask yourself, what did I say that felt wrong? Was the pattern I used natural? What might a native speaker have said instead? Study that pattern. Look for it in input. Practice saying it the correct way and add it to your feel. This is the cycle of fluency building. Speak from feel, make mistakes, review, study the pattern, absorb through input. Speak again. Each pass through this cycle, your grammar instinct gets stronger and your grammar paralysis gets weaker. Over time, and this may take many months, your speaking will become grammatically accurate, not because you are checking rules, but because the correct patterns have become your natural instinct. You will feel when something is right. You will feel when something is wrong. And you will rarely have to think about why. That is internalized grammar. And it feels nothing like grammar study. It feels like intuition. It feels like the language has become yours. And it is yours, every bit of it. Not because you studied every rule, but because you let the patterns enter you through thousands of hours of listening and speaking and living in the language. Grammar is not a cage, it is a river. And once you stop swimming against it and simply let it carry you, fluency is the place where you arrive. One specific thing that helps grammar become internalized is what language teachers call noticing. This is the practice of paying attention to specific patterns when you encounter them in listening or reading. When you hear a native speaker use the present perfect tense in a way that feels natural, you note it. When you read a sentence that uses a preposition in a way that surprised you, you notice it. When a phrase contains grammar you have studied but never heard in natural speech before, you mark it. Noticing does not mean stopping everything to analyze the grammar formally. It means shining a light on something briefly, seeing it clearly, and allowing it to register. Over time, the things you have noticed accumulate in your brain alongside the patterns extracted from general listening. And together, they build something much stronger than either could build alone. A deep, layered, intuitive sense of how English grammar actually works when it is alive and in use. This is very different from studying grammar from a rule book. Rule books describe the grammar. Living input shows you the grammar in action. And it is the grammar and action that your mouth needs to learn to produce. 8. Real conversation practice. The rules of productive discomfort. Everything you have learned in this course so far, the inner voice, the mouth memory, the scene thinking, the slow speech, the grammar instinct, all of it only becomes real through one thing: actual conversation. Not practice conversations, not simulated conversations, not conversations with a script, real conversations with real people in real time where you do not know what is going to be said next and you have to respond without preparation. This is where learners often stop. Because real conversation is terrifying when you are not confident in the language. There is nowhere to hide. There is no pause button. There is no dictionary. There is no time to translate. It is just you in the English language and another human being in real time. And this terror is exactly why you must do it, not despite the discomfort, because of it. There is a concept in learning science called the zone of proximal development. It is the zone just beyond what you can currently do comfortably. It is the place where you are challenged but not overwhelmed. And it is the only place where real growth happens. If your conversations are too easy, you are not growing. If they are impossibly difficult, you shut down and learn nothing. The sweet spot is productive discomfort. Conversations that stretch you just beyond your current ability, that require you to reach for language you are not yet automatic with, but that you can manage with effort. How do you find this sweet spot? A few ways. First, choose conversation partners who are patient and supportive, not people who will correct you constantly or make you feel stupid when you struggle. People who will speak naturally, respond genuinely, and give you space to work through your English without judgment. Other learners can be excellent partners. Native speakers who are patient with learners can be gold. Second, choose topics that you actually care about. When the topic matters to you, you are more motivated to find the words. Your brain reaches harder for the language because the communication itself is meaningful to you. If you are talking about something you do not care about at all, the effort of speaking English feels gratuitous. If you are talking about something you love, the effort feels worth it. Third, enter each conversation with permission to be imperfect. Tell yourself before you begin, I will make mistakes. That is the purpose of this conversation. The mistakes are not failures, they are data. They are showing me exactly what I still need to build. Fourth, after each conversation, take 5 minutes to review. What phrases did you reach for but could not find? What grammar felt wrong? What moments did you feel the translation process kicking in? What did you wish you could have said but could not? These moments of failure are your curriculum. They are telling you exactly what to practice next. Write them down, study them, practice them, and then have another conversation and see if they come more easily. Fifth, have conversations regularly. Not once a week, ideally every day, even short conversations, even 5 minutes. The regularity matters more than the length because fluency is built through repetition over time, not through occasional intensive bursts. Now let me address one more thing about real conversation. The fear of not understanding. This fear is separate from the fear of speaking. It is the fear that the other person will say something and you will have absolutely no idea what they said, and then there will be a terrible exposed silence, and everyone will know that you do not understand English. Here is the honest truth. This will sometimes happen. You will sometimes not understand something, and it will be uncomfortable, and that is fine. Because every fluent speaker in any language sometimes does not understand something. The difference between a fluent speaker and a struggling one is not that fluent speakers always understand everything. It is that fluent speakers have the tools to handle not understanding gracefully. Learn these tools. Practice them until they are automatic. Could you say that again, please? I am sorry, I did not quite catch that. Could you speak a little more slowly? I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that? What do you mean by that word? I am not familiar with that phrase. Could you explain it differently? These are not signs of weakness. These are signs of an engaged, honest communicator. Anyone who is genuinely trying to understand something will ask for clarification. It is the people who pretend to understand when they do not who create real communication problems. Use these clarification tools without shame. They buy you time, they give you more information, and they often impress the person you are talking to because they show that you care about understanding correctly. Real conversation is the final frontier of language learning. Everything else you do, all the study, all the shadowing, all the inner voice practice, is preparation for this. Do not wait until you feel ready. You will never feel completely ready. The preparation happens inside the conversation as much as it happens outside it. Start today, find a conversation, step into the discomfort, and trust the process. 9, absorbing English through massive listening. Language is primarily a spoken thing. For hundreds of thousands of years before writing was invented, humans learned language entirely through listening. The ear was the original language teacher, and it remains the most powerful language teacher available to you. Most English learners dramatically underestimate the importance of listening. They study, they read, they practice speaking, but they do not listen enough. Not enough in terms of hours, and not enough in terms of quality attention. Let me tell you what massive quality listening does for your English. It does things that nothing else can do. It gives your brain an enormous database of patterns. Every sentence you hear is a data point. Every phrase, every word combination, every time you hear something and understand it, your brain files it away. It notes the word order, the intonation, the way the grammar manifests in real speech. Over time, these patterns accumulate to the point where your brain can recognize correct English not by applying rules, but by recognizing familiar patterns. It teaches you vocabulary in context. When you hear a new word in the middle of a sentence that you otherwise understand, you have a much higher chance of guessing its meaning correctly, and words learned in context are remembered far better than words learned from lists. Because the context is not just information, it is a story. And we remember stories. It trains your ear for real speed and natural pronunciation. Written English and spoken English are not the same thing. Spoken English is faster, more connected, more reduced. Words blend together, syllables disappear. Sounds change when they are next to other sounds. If you only study written English, you will be completely unprepared for the sound of real speech. Listening trains your ear to decode what you actually hear, not the idealized version you learned in textbooks. It builds your intuition for what sounds natural. After enough listening, you begin to feel when an English phrase is natural and when it sounds constructed. This intuition is priceless when you are speaking because it acts as an automatic quality check on your own output. So how do you listen well? How do you make your listening time as productive as possible? The first principle is comprehensibility. You need to understand enough of what you are listening to for it to be useful. If you understand almost nothing, your brain cannot extract patterns because it cannot connect sounds to meanings. If you understand everything easily, you are not being challenged and growth is slow. The sweet spot is understanding about 70 to 80%. Enough to follow the meaning, enough challenge to stretch you. The second principle is variety. Do not listen to only one type of English. Listen to accents from different English-speaking countries. Listen to formal speech and informal speech. Listen to conversations and lectures and storytelling and debates. Every variety gives your ear something new to process and expands your range of comprehension. The third principle is repetition. When you hear something that challenges you, listen to it again and again. Listening to the same passage multiple times is not boring or wasteful. It is extraordinarily productive because each time you listen, you catch something you missed before. A word that was unclear becomes clear. A phrase that seems strange now makes sense. The grammar of a complex sentence resolves itself. There is a practice called intensive listening that involves listening with complete focus and attention, usually to short segments, and analyzing everything you hear. You listen, you pause, you repeat, you look up what you do not understand, you listen again. This is hard work. It is cognitively demanding, but it builds your English faster per minute of practice than almost any other method. The complementary practice is extensive listening, listening to large amounts of English without focusing on individual words or structures. You listen to podcasts while you walk, you listen to audiobooks while you cook, you watch films in English. The goal here is not perfect comprehension of every detail. The goal is exposure, volume, total time spent inside the English language. Both kinds of listening are important. Intensive listening for quality, depth, and accuracy. Extensive listening for volume, naturalness, and the feeling of being immersed in the language. Here is a specific recommendation for daily listening practice. In the morning, Listen to something educational or informational in English, a podcast on a topic you care about, a documentary, a lecture. This gets your brain into English mode early in the day. During any commuting or passive time, keep English audio going. Do not waste those minutes with your native language content. Your ears are processing sound constantly anyway. Make that sound English. In the evening, watch something in English for pleasure. With English subtitles, not your native language subtitles. Yes, English subtitles are harder, but they build something crucial, the connection between what you hear and what you read in English without your native language as an intermediary. Over time, turn off the subtitles entirely for things you have already watched and partly understood. Force your ears to carry the full weight of comprehension. It will be harder. You will miss things, but your ear will develop in ways that subtitled viewing cannot achieve. Remember, your ear is your most powerful language learning tool, and most learners are not using it nearly enough. Feed it English every day in every available moment. The results will surprise you. There is another aspect of listening that rarely gets discussed, and it is this: listening builds confidence. Not in an abstract motivational sense, but in a very concrete neurological sense. Every time you hear English and understand it, your brain receives a signal that says, this language is accessible to me. Every successful act of comprehension lowers the anxiety around the language, and lower anxiety means more willingness to speak, and more speaking means more practice, and more practice means more fluency. This positive cycle, listen, understand, feel confident, speak, improve, is the engine of natural language acquisition. It is what happens in total immersion environments. People who move to English-speaking countries and improve rapidly are not doing something magical. They are simply being forced into this cycle every single day by their environment. The listening is unavoidable. The comprehension builds, the confidence grows, the speaking follows. You can create a version of this cycle without moving countries. You can build a partial immersion environment wherever you are. English music in the background, English podcasts during every passive moment, English content for entertainment, English conversations whenever possible. The goal is to make English the dominant language of your ears throughout the day, even if it is not the dominant language of the people around you. When you do this consistently, when English is what your ears are processing for the majority of your waking hours, your brain begins to normalize it. English stops feeling like a foreign visitor and starts feeling like a resident. And residents of the mind speak without invitation. They simply begin to emerge naturally when they are needed. That is what you are aiming for. Not English as an effort, English as a resident, and massive listening is how you give it a home. 10. The fluency mindset, how to think like a fluent speaker. We have covered a great deal of practical technique in this course. Vocabulary without translation, the English inner voice, mouth memory and the shadowing technique, scene thinking, slow speaking, grammar instinct, real conversation, massive listening. These are your tools. But tools are only as powerful as the person using them. And the person using them is shaped by something deeper than technique. They are shaped by mindset, by the beliefs they hold about themselves, about the language, about what is possible for them. In this final lesson, we are going to talk about the mindset of a fluent speaker. Because without the right mindset, the best techniques in the world will not take you all the way to fluency. And with the right mindset, you will find ways to progress even when the techniques are imperfect. The first element of the fluency mindset is the belief that you belong in the English language. This sounds simple. It is not. Many English learners carry, underneath all their studying and practicing, a quiet belief that fluent English is for other people, for people who grew up in English-speaking countries, for people who started learning earlier, for people who are smarter or more talented at languages or more naturally verbal. And that for them, for you, fluent English is an aspiration that will always be slightly out of reach. This belief is a lie, and it is a lie that will sabotage your progress at every step if you let it. Fluent English is for every person who puts in the work to build it. Fluency has nothing to do with where you were born, or how old you are, or how talented you believe yourself to be. It has everything to do with the hours invested, the right methods applied, and the persistence to keep going through the stages of discomfort. You belong in this language. It belongs to you as much as it belongs to anyone who learned it in childhood. Claim it, own it, not as something foreign that you are borrowing, but as a part of who you are and who you are becoming. The second element of the fluency mindset is tolerance for imperfection. Fluent speakers make mistakes, native speakers make mistakes. Language is not mathematics. It does not require perfect execution to communicate effectively. It requires good enough execution combined with the confidence to keep going. When you make a mistake in English, you have two choices. You can let that mistake shrink you. You can feel embarrassed, you can hesitate more, you can speak less, or you can treat the mistake as information, neutral, useful, and temporary. A marker showing you where the next stage of building needs to happen. Every professional musician plays a wrong note sometimes. Every professional writer publishes a sentence they later wish they had written differently. This does not make them failures, it makes them human. And human is exactly what language was designed for. Give yourself the grace you would give a child learning to speak. Patient, encouraging, focused on progress, not perfection, and watch how that grace transforms your relationship with the language. The third element of the fluency mindset is identity investment. This means beginning to think of yourself not as someone who is trying to speak English, but as someone who speaks English. Not perfectly, not yet, but genuinely. The identity of a person who operates in English, who is comfortable in English, who has a place in the English-speaking world. Identity investment changes your behavior in ways you cannot fully plan or anticipate. When you see yourself as an English speaker, you naturally look for more opportunities to use the language. You notice English everywhere and engage with it instead of ignoring it. You correct your mistakes more seriously because they feel like departures from who you are, not confirmations of a limitation. You do not need to be fluent to adopt this identity. You need to adopt this identity in order to become fluent. The identity comes first. The language grows into it. The fourth element of the fluency mindset is patience with the process. Language learning is not linear. There will be weeks when you feel like you are improving rapidly, when English is flowing, when the words are coming easily, when conversations feel almost effortless. And there will be weeks when you feel like you have gone backwards, when you stumble over words you used to say easily, when the translation process comes crashing back, when your inner voice refuses to speak English. These fluctuations are normal. They are not signs of failure. They are the natural rhythm of deep skill acquisition. Periods of apparent regression often precede significant breakthroughs because the brain is doing invisible reorganization work during those times. Trust the process even when you cannot see the progress. Keep the daily practices going even on the days when they feel pointless. Keep having conversations even on the days when they feel awful. Keep the English inner voice alive even when it goes quiet. Consistency through the hard days is what separates the people who become fluent from the people who stay permanently at intermediate. The fifth element of the fluency mindset is joy. Find joy in the English language, not just in the destination, not just in the imagined future where you speak perfectly, but in the journey itself. Find joy in a new word that you discover and love. Find joy in a conversation that went better than you expected. Find joy in a moment when you understood something and did not translate. Find joy in the music of English, in its idioms and its rhythms and its endless creativity. When a language is a source of joy, you return to it naturally. You do not need to force yourself to study. You want to be inside the language because the language is a pleasant place to be. Find what you love about English, the films, the music, the stories, the ideas, the people you can meet when you speak it. Let those things pull you toward the language every day. Let love do some of the work that discipline alone cannot sustain forever. You have come a long way through this course, from understanding why your brain translates to building the tools and mindset to bypass that translation entirely. Let us bring everything together into a single clear picture of where you are going. The day you stop translating is not a day that arrives suddenly. It is a day that creeps up on you. It is the day you realize that you just had a 10-minute conversation in English, and at no point during that conversation did you think in your native language. The conversation just happened. The English just flowed. You had thoughts and your mouth gave them to the other person in English naturally, without a gap. Some people reach this day after 6 months of intensive practice. Some reach it after a year. Some take longer. The timeline does not matter. What matters is that the day is reachable for everyone who does the work, truly, genuinely, patiently does the work. Here is a summary of the work. Build vocabulary that connects directly to meaning, not to translations. Cultivate an English inner voice that narrates your daily life. Train your mouth through repetition until common phrases are automatic. Shadow native speakers every day to absorb rhythm, speed, and music. Think in scenes, not sentences. Speak slowly enough to stay in control. Let your grammar instinct develop through input rather than forcing it through conscious rules. Engage in real conversation regularly, especially when it is uncomfortable. Listen to massive amounts of English every single day, and hold the mindset of someone who belongs in this language, who makes mistakes without shame, who progresses through patience and joy. Do all of this and the day will come. On that day, something permanent has changed in your brain. A new language pathway has been carved, not alongside your native language pathway, not built on top of it, but beside it, independent of it, direct from thought to English word to English speech. You will still have your native language. It will still be there, rich and full and beautiful. You are not replacing it. You are adding to yourself. You are becoming a person who lives in two languages. And the English you have built from the inside, not translated, not borrowed, but truly yours, will serve you for the rest of your life. This is not just a language skill. This is a capacity, a window into a world that is enormous, that is connected to billions of people, that holds within it centuries of thought and art and conversation and story and science and debate. Everything that has been thought and expressed in English, all of it becomes available to you when you truly inhabit the language. That is what you are building, not just the ability to communicate, the ability to fully inhabit another world. Keep going. The work is worth it, and the day is coming. Let me leave you with a final thought about what it means to truly speak a language. There is a difference between knowing a language and being in a language. You can know everything about French cooking without ever having cooked. You can know all the rules of tennis without ever having held a racket. You can know a language without ever truly being inside it. Being inside a language means something different. It means the language is the medium through which your thoughts move. Not a container you pour your thoughts into, not a costume your thoughts wear, but the water your thoughts swim in. It means the language is invisible in the same way that a person who has learned to read does not see individual letters anymore. They see meaning directly. That invisibility is what you are working toward. The day English becomes invisible, the day you stop noticing that you are speaking English because English is simply how your thoughts are moving, that is the day you have arrived. And it will come, not easily, not without setbacks, not without the occasional day of frustration when nothing comes easily and the translation habit seems stronger than ever, but it will come because you now know what you are building and how to build it. You have the tools, you have the understanding, you have the mindset. What remains is the doing, the daily, patient, consistent doing. Go speak English, go listen, go shadow, go think in English, go make mistakes and learn from them, go have conversations that are hard and come out of them stronger, go build the world inside you where English lives naturally. And on the day it finally feels natural, on the day you catch yourself in the middle of an English conversation and realize there is no translation happening, no gap, no hesitation, remember this beginning. Remember the first lesson. Remember that you chose to build this and that it was worth every uncomfortable, productive, remarkable moment of the journey.